I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoops, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Take a step back.
Well, hello there, travelers. Welcome to another episode of the Destination Manifestation Podcast. So today I want to tackle a very common, unfortunately it's very common, belief that comes up quite a bit. It can come up either when you're manifesting, when you're using the tool of hypnotherapy or coaching for manifestation, or really otherwise. I kind of consider it to be the kingpin of limiting beliefs because it's sort of a meta limiting belief, meaning it's a limiting belief about the actual process of making positive changes in your life, whether that process be manifestation in general, or using hypnotherapy for positive change, or even just simply thinking about reaching your goal. It's the kingpin of limiting beliefs because it's reflective of the actual process itself. And here's the belief. This won't work for me. Have you ever been guilty of thinking that one? I know I sure have a few times in my life. This won't work for me. And what makes this limiting belief such a tricky one is that if you do believe it, and let's just say hypothetically that you are manifesting correctly, you're a great manifester and you just don't know it, and you believe this, well, it's going to prove itself true, isn't it? It won't work for you then. But it's not going to work for you not because manifestation or hypnotherapy doesn't work. No, those laws, those tools, they're working just fine. They're doing their job. It's because you manifest what you believe. And so if you believe that it won't work for you, you will manifest it not working for you. And that's one of the main reasons why I don't offer gift cards for my one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching sessions. Like, you cannot buy hypnotherapy sessions for someone else if you work with me, right? I'll say this. There's a caveat if you're a parent and you want me to work with a minor, and that seems like that's a good fit. But even then, I strongly vet both your reasoning. I make sure and check in with the child before we start a session to make sure they're fully on board, because I know that if you or them or really anyone is doing hypnotherapy and they don't think that it's going to work for them, it won't. And so why are you wasting your time and money, and why am I wasting my time, right? Like, we got to make sure that, and that's why I do a lot of education through this podcast, through when I talk with clients, I educate about hypnotherapy as much as possible, because I want you to understand how it works, and so that your brain can allow you to believe that it works, because it does, because that is the gateway. That's how it's going to work for you. So hypnotherapy will not work for you unless you're open to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? And this is true of so many things in life. I mean, we could give you a million different examples of where this is true. And that's why it's so important that we just need to nip this belief in the bud. It's a nasty little limiting belief that only really serves to confuse you. And honestly, it keeps you from truly knowing your real power. And that's so sad, because the you that manifests this belief is, in fact, very powerful. Like, you're a manifester. You manifested it. You did it. But you just didn't realize that you did it because of this belief. That makes me so sad. Like, imagine somebody's out there right now manifesting like crazy, really a beautiful natural manifester like we all are. And yet they don't know it because of this belief. And so they could be using that amazing power of theirs and ability of theirs to manifest what they actually want if they just knew it. Like, I'm going to cry. That makes me sad, right? This is such a catch-22. I also find that this belief is kind of one of the major beliefs that stand in the way of people who are just on the brink of making big positive changes in their life. So the people who can squash this belief, they are the ones that move forward and make those changes. I see it time and time again. I've even experienced it in my own life. When I got over this belief, that's when the changes came through, right? But the people who can't, or I should say, at least those who haven't yet, because we all can, and this episode's going to teach you how. But those people who haven't yet, they tend to stay stuck until they can. So my hope and wish for you is I want you to move forward from this. Okay. I've had quite a few what I call almost clients over the years express this belief to me. And I call them almost clients because they're listeners of the show. Maybe they love the podcast. Maybe they follow me on social media. They comment on my posts. They DM me. Maybe we've even exchanged emails a few times, right? They've expressed that they would love to do some one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching, but they don't think it's going to work for them. And so, I mean, naturally, if you don't think something's going to work for you, for whatever reason that might be, they haven't explored that route yet. And it always leaves me like feeling so conflicted, right? Because it's kind of like a chicken before the egg sort of scenario. This belief, well, I mean, I know it would be so easy to clear it up. We could do it in one session of hypnotherapy and coaching. Boom, done, gone. But I also know that it's this belief that is preventing them from signing up for that session that would help them. So it's like, as much as I wish, hypnotherapy and coaching was a public subsidized service, wouldn't that be beautiful? I would love that. That it could be free and available to all, like outside of the occasional session giveaway that I might do, or like what we just had happen here recently where a former client of mine donated sessions to others. I don't personally have the time or the resources to be able to coach them out of that belief so that they can realize their own power and make the changes that they need to make, right? So I'm kind of left always feeling like, what do I do? Like, how can I help them through this? How can I help you so you can help yourself, sort of thing, right? And well, my answer to that, my solution to that is let's tackle it in an episode like today. This might be the perfect free resource for someone who continuously wants to make that change, but this belief that they've been holding on to has sort of falsely convinced them that it's not possible for them. So today, let's review some of the major sort of sticking points associated with this belief, and more importantly, how you can overcome them, because I want you to overcome it and realize your power. So here's major sticking point number 1, and these are in no particular order, okay? You believe this won't work for you because you're still using your past as evidence. That's right. You want to manifest something, and I'm sure you have that something in your mind right now as you're listening to this show. I'm sure you know what that is. But the moment you start thinking about manifesting that thing, there it is. It's like a little devil on your shoulder. The past comes up to rear its ugly little head, and it just wants to convince you otherwise. Meaning you think about that one time where you really wanted to manifest something and it didn't happen the way you envisioned or the way you intended. So obviously that must mean you just can't manifest and it's never, ever going to happen again. I don't mean to make fun of you, but do you sense the sarcasm in my voice here, right? That's the rationale. I know it's not logical, but that's what's going through our minds when we use the past as evidence. And this is a very human thing to do. So can we just all offer ourselves some compassion here? Okay. Your brain, it's designed, it wants to gather evidence. It is doing this all day, every day. It wants to root itself in something that it thinks is real, meaning something that has already happened in the 3D, something it can use its, 5 very human senses to perceive. And so it wants to root itself in something real, and then it wants to extrapolate that it will continue to happen that way. That's our brain's predictive, capabilities, right? This is what your brain does to try to keep you safe. The brain wants to stay in familiar territory. And there's a name for this territory. You've been in this territory. You've spent a lot of time here. It's called the comfort zone. Okay. And because familiar is known, familiar is safe. You can predict familiar a lot better than something new, right? You've been there, you've done that. You have a sense of it. Something unfamiliar? You don't know what that is. But the unknown possibility of success? Ugh. To the brain, it's like, yikes, that's unfamiliar. That's stepping beyond the bounds of the comfort zone. It kind of reminds me of this game that my husband and I play. I think actually it started with my mom and we just continued it. I don't know why. And we play this when we're driving, okay? So I'm sure you probably experienced this too. We've lived in Austin, Texas for like 4 years now. There are some streets that we pass every day, right? But we've just never really had a reason to drive down those streets. There's nothing down there. We've never gone to any places down those streets. And so we call that area the end of the world. It like almost like we're like a little sim and the simulation just hasn't had to render in that direction yet. So it's the end of the world. And so let's just say I, go to a new hairstylist or something like that. I'll go somewhere new and something that, so I'll go someplace that's outside my typical, stopping grounds. And I'll tell my husband, I'll say, guess where that new shop was? Or guess where I just went for brunch? I had to go past the end of the world to get there. That's what I'll say to him. And it's funny. It's like a vernacular in our family. Like he knows what I mean when I say that. And I think it's kind of similar to how our brain works. Your brain does the exact same thing. It's always trying to look out 8 steps ahead because it thinks that if it can predict the future, it will be better equipped to handle whatever comes its way. It's just trying to protect you. But the major flaw, the major problem with this predictive feature of our brains is one, it can lead to a lot of anxiety if it's left unchecked. All of a sudden, you don't want to take action unless you know those 8 steps for sure. This is a hallmark of anxiety. And number 2, it's often very wrong. Yeah. We think our brains are so smart, and they usually are. They're where our smarts are held, but sometimes they're very inaccurate. So the brain assumes that things will be the same when that just simply isn't always the case. And so in turn, to try to keep you within that existing comfort zone of familiarity, it's going to try to make you feel like you are crazy for considering that things could be different. It's going to make that statement feel like a lie. But guess what? It's not a lie. Now, it might be a lie if you applied it to your past, meaning like, let's just say you didn't manifest something in the past. And then you told yourself, I manifested this thing in my past. Well, then, yeah, that's going to feel like a lie because it is a lie. The past is done. It's over, right? If you didn't manifest that thing and you told yourself you did, that would be a lie. But here's the tricky thing that your brain does. It tries to overlay that same sense of a lie, but onto your future. So when you say, well, I could manifest this thing in my future, it's giving you that same sense. It's sounding the lie alarm. Right? Untrue, that's a lie. But that's a false alarm. We don't know if that's a lie or if it's truth because the future has not happened yet, brain. But the brain likes to think its predictive capabilities are truth. It takes its predictive capabilities as truth, even though it isn't. So the brain wants to seek confirmation, okay, not contradiction. It tries to get away from contradiction. So what it's doing is it's filtering all those memories, all those examples from your past that supports your doubt so that you don't realize that you're lying to yourself about your future. Ouch. I catch myself even doing this sometimes. My brain over-indexes on the manifestations that didn't come through. Right? It's funny. I first discovered manifestation when I was 18 years old. I've told you guys this story. I was a freshman at NYU. And I still remember the first thing that I attempted to manifest. Okay? I was an actress at the time. I was studying acting at NYU. And there was this big show that NYU would do each year, which is funny. I think they actually called it the NYU reality show. I don't know if they're still doing it or not. But, and it's kind of, a little bit ironic considering I did end up getting cast on a real reality show, some 14 years later. But anyways, so I really wanted a part in the show. And so I read the book, The Secret. I'm like, yeah, great, manifestation. I love this. Let's manifest a role in this show. And so I showed up to my audition and I completely bombed. I remember I even auditioned for the woman that I auditioned for to get into NYU. And I completely bombed. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to think that she shouldn't have let me into NYU. Like, oh la la, like all these things were going through my mind. And, you know, I didn't manifest the part, obviously. And it's so funny, my brain still 17 years later, it wants to use that first manifestation attempt as evidence for why I can't manifest other things. Like it will still pop into my mind, from time to time, which is so silly. Like you think I've learned a thing or two about manifestation since then. What, you think so? 17 years of study, a thriving business coaching and teaching manifestation, a podcast about it later. I think I'm more skilled than I was 17 years ago, or at least I should hope. I think a more accurate response would be, one, the first time a person attempts nearly anything in life, it's usually a flop, right? The first time you skateboard, the first time you play the piano, the first time you attempt anything that requires skill, it's usually a flop. You have to learn more. You have to hone your skills. And two, maybe a role in that show actually wasn't in alignment for what I truly wanted. Because here's the thing with manifestation. You might think you want to manifest the thing, but it's the intention, it's the feeling that you're actually manifesting. And the universe gets to decide how that manifests for you. So remember, we don't pick the how. The universe picks how the manifestation will come through. And in fact, I remember that this show was really big on sort of devising your own theater sketches and your own theater pieces, which honestly, I hated doing. Like, I am not a writer. I was an actor. I didn't want to write anything. And I would have had to write my own scenes for the show. It would have been miserable. And three, maybe it was more in alignment to manifest a CBS reality show than an NYU reality show, and that ended up coming through. So I sometimes kind of joke with my own brain. I say, brain, haven't I gathered enough evidence to show you that things turn out differently if I stick with them long enough? Like, shouldn't that be my default assumption about my past and future by now? Like, I feel like I've earned that brain. Like, don't you know this brain? I got on the TV show Big Brother, my 7th year of applying. I became pregnant with my triple rainbow baby, the baby I'm currently in my 2nd trimester with, after 4 years of trying to conceive, right? That's nearly 48 attempts, 5 of which were IUI fertility procedures. I launched my successful business after 8 years of failed ventures in other areas. Like, haven't I proven to you, brain, in my past that if I stick with something long enough that it will happen for me? So, like, why in the world do I assume because it didn't happen before, it means it won't happen now? That's ludicrous. I have so much evidence to the contrary. And so do you. So, how do we prove to the brain that the past is the past and no more than that? That the past, is what I will simply like to call old crusty manifestations, and that our future is really actually a blank slate in which we get to create, and that possibility exists there if we choose to believe it starting now? Well, we need to switch our brain modes. That's what I call it. Instead of the detective part of your brain that's combing the past, looking for evidence to support why this won't work for you, I want you to tap into your inner visionary instead. Okay? Let her or him or it, let them take over. Instead of using the past as proof that it won't work, start using your vision as proof of what's possible. You see, the visionary has zero concern with the dealings of the past. She's just not concerned. The visionary simply looks forward. The visionary creates forward. The visionary creates future-based evidence instead. It's no longer a question of, did this or did this not work? The question becomes, well, can this work? Can it work eventually? The only time the visionary ever really contemplates the past is when she asks herself, what would I do differently this time? Now that I have new tools, I have new support, and I have a different sense of awareness. What would I do differently? I think about that with my first sort of botched manifestation, my first attempt, right? Let's see. I've read about 1,000 manifestation books since then. I've picked up a trick or two. I'm now a certified hypnotherapist. You better bet. If I was back there, 18 years old, auditioning for an NYU production, I'd manifest that quite differently now than I did back then. Current me has more resources available to her than past me did. So she can create a different result. And that's the same for you too. It's something that comes up a lot when I work with clients, especially with fears and when we work on phobias. Usually the first instance of that fear came from an event that happened in the past. I mean, like 99% of the people that have a fear, it stemmed from some inciting event, right? You have a fear of elevators because when you were 16 years old, you were trapped in an elevator for 5 hours and you didn't like it. And that made you scared. Boom, past instigating event. And that was really scary, right? Because 16-year-old you didn't know as much as you now know. She or he didn't have the resources to deal with that fear and anxiety like you now have, especially when you work in a program, a one-on-one program with me and we work together, right? And so we need to update your brain's concept of yourself. Like kind of like how we age, we never quite feel the age that we truly are. Like I would say if you ask me like, Brittany, how old do you feel? Like, I feel like I'm like 25. I'm in my mid-20s, if I had to guess. Like, that's how I feel. But actually, I'm in my mid-30s. So I'm like a decade behind. Probably because the pandemic had something to do with that, but that's another topic, right? It's also kind of one of the reasons why I think my mom is going to live to be at least 120 years old. Like, she's in her 60s right now, but she is just a big kid at heart. So the fact that your brain hasn't updated your self-concept isn't always necessarily a bad thing. But when it comes to our own concept of our capability and how we see ourselves and what's possible for us, those are the instances where we want to update it. We want to remember that we have new understandings and new resources available to us. And hypnotherapy is a great tool that can facilitate that updating process. The visionary, I think of her sort of as the best actress of all. She can step into any role. And she's really great at stepping into the version of you who's already manifested the thing that you desire. So I like to call that version of you manifested me, manifested you, right? And so the visionary asks, if I were already manifested me, the version of me who made this happen, the version of me where this worked, how would I think? How would I act? What would I do? What would I avoid doing? Would there be anything I wouldn't do, right? How would I be feeling today? The visionary wants to know those questions. She doesn't care about the past. She wants to answer those questions. And so every time you take an action that is aligned with manifested you, even if it's just a very first step, even if it doesn't even pan out or work at first, but you did it anyways, and you keep going, well, now that becomes new evidence for why it can work. Whew, powerful stuff. All right, let's talk about sticking point number 2 now, okay? You believe this can't work for you because you think you're the exception to the rule. I lovingly call this the special pretty little butterfly effect. Now, I'm a millennial, so I feel entitled to say this, okay? But our generation gets a really bad rap for being coddled and told we're so special, right? Everyone gets a trophy. People have been saying that about millennials for years. And honestly, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think our parents were just trying to give us the love and affirmations that they wanted to hear from their parents and never received, right? But I will say that I think this may have led to some of us thinking that universal laws and rules somehow don't apply to us. That we're so unique that we can just defy the very laws of nature, that we are the exception to the rule. And that just simply doesn't help you when you're attempting to walk the path to your fulfillment. And while I don't doubt that you are a very special person, in fact, I know it if you're listening to this show, I think you're very special in so many different ways, I do regret to inform you that one of your differences isn't that manifestation can't work for you. Sorry, you're not that special, or that hypnotherapy can't work for you. Okay? This belief, it feels like protection, but it's actually just isolation in disguise. It's fear in disguise, a defense mechanism that's just usually rooted in shame. Because if you believe that you are uniquely broken, then if you believe that, you don't have to risk coping or being let down, right? Very convenient. And here's the kicker. We all want to be right. And this belief helps you feel right, in quotes, about your doubts. Because if something works for other people, but it doesn't work for you, then you can stay in that comfort of abdicating any responsibility, of thinking, oh, it's not my fault. It's just how I was made, right? And all of a sudden you're absolved of any responsibility, and that feels a whole lot better. But this flavor of limiting belief, it is particularly troublesome because it also feeds all those other unworthy, self-doubting beliefs that you may have, like I'm too messed up, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or whatever you feel you're too much of or not enough of. It supports that, and that's not a good thing. I remember a big way I used to feel this, okay? It was when I used to be a couch reality TV show competitor. You know the kind. You might be one if you watch reality TV. All those decades I spent watching Big Brother on TV before I actually got the chance to play it in real life. I would be this couch expert. I'd scream at the TV. I'd have long, lengthy discussions with my friends and my family about how stupid some move some player made. I was just this armchair expert. I was so good. And anytime something particularly bad would happen, especially on the show Big Brother, like if there was a bully or a fight happening, I would just sort of sit there in my self-righteousness and think, how do those people stay silent? I would never do that. And I really just sort of puffed myself up with these assumptions that I was so special and I was so different, and this show just needs to wait and see me, and then they'll know. I felt that way until I actually played the game. Until I was in that environment and I realized that the 3 hours a week that makes network television doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the 168 hours a week that you live in that house playing that game. Or however long you spend watching the live feeds, which I can guarantee you is not 168 straight hours every single week for 3 months, even if you're an avid live feeder, okay? What I watched on TV or on the feeds was a watered down kindergarten version. And yet, here I was in the house getting my master's and also getting my ass kicked at the same time. Okay. Here I was in a situation where there actually was a bully in our house. He raised his voice towards one of my friends, and I froze. The version of me who I always assumed would sort of gallantly step into danger and defend anyone, she was frozen in silence. And sure, you could say, oh, well, everyone else in the house was too. But that didn't make it right. Just because everyone was doing it doesn't make it right. And I realize now it didn't make it right, but it made me human. And it made me human because it's a very human, universal law sort of response that when you feel unsafe or when you feel threatened, which let's be honest, conflict in that house feels way more threatening and heightened because one, the outcome does mean your life in the game, which after a while that starts to feel like life or death if it means anything to you. And two, it is your whole reality. Okay? If there's a fight in that house, you can't go for a walk or a drive and clear your head. You're stuck and you're confronting it. And that's why the show is filled with so much drama, because you can't escape it. And so your body, or at least I should say my body, went into fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? And I realized that I was not immune. I was not special to any of those things that I watched on TV all those decades prior. I wasn't. I was just a human like anybody else who had ever played that game, right? I was no better of a person than any of those people who had played before. And I think it's so easy for the Twitter or the X trolls to comment on your game and to comment on you and to judge you, because I think they're simply falling into the same patterns that I did before I experienced it firsthand. You think you know better as an outsider. And if they experienced it firsthand, they'd quickly realize that they weren't special or immune either. And I think the same applies to you, not just in Big Brother, but like with your goals and your ability to make positive changes. And so the next time you feel your millennial sort of specialism coming through, whether or not you were younger or older than a millennial, doesn't matter. I want you to consider this instead. If I feel like I'm the exception to why it won't work, then I also get to be the exception to why it can. Right? If you are so special, what's to say that you couldn't defy the odds then? Surprise yourself. Let yourself be the one who finally lets it be easy. Use your specialness. Put it to good use. If the rules don't apply to you, great. That means the limits don't apply to you either. Either you believe that, or you believe that you're just like everyone else, which means that hypnotherapy works on you just like it works on any other brain. Okay? It is a natural brainwave state. You and I and your mother and anyone else, we experience it every day as we go to sleep at night and when we wake up in the morning, without fail, every single day. It's just the theta brainwave state. It's a functioning, healthy brain experiences it. So you experience it multiple times naturally throughout the day. And so now, when you'd use hypnotherapy as a tool for positive change, you're just choosing to embrace that natural capability that you already have and use it to make some positive changes in your life instead. You can do it. You're not that special. I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean it in a truthful way, okay? Let's move on to sticking point number 3. Number 3, you believe this can't work for you because something is wrong or broken with you. Now, I know this sounds a lot like number 2, but it's actually slightly different. It's when you take failure personally, meaning that you haven't reached that goal of yours just yet, not because you haven't taken the right actions or you haven't developed the right skills yet. No, you believe that you haven't reached it yet because you, as a person, are inherently incapable of doing so. That's what you believe. You've made it about you rather than about what you did or about what you didn't do. You've confused your past patterns with your personal identity, believing this is just how I am instead of this is just what I experienced so far. And it's because so many of us were never taught to separate our results from our sense of self-worth. They got so intrinsically tied together somewhere along the line. I think this is especially true if you grew up being praised for your achievements or even shamed for your mistakes. I remember that was one of the reasons why I would take rejection as an actress so personally. Like, acting was my entire personality. Like, it was my whole identity for years. Like, I feel like even people who were supposedly very close with me, like, they couldn't even see the real me. They would just see this theater mask I was wearing. And so, to not get a part that I really, really wanted, like, you weren't saying, oh, you just didn't have a good audition that day, Brittany. Or, oh, Brittany, they're looking for someone who's blonde and you have brown hair, right? You were saying that I wasn't good at what I had centered my whole life around. And that story, that hurts way more if you believe that story. And I'll also say this, it feels so stark once you manage to untangle your identity from those goals. like I was lucky enough to be able to do. You really feel it. I even remember at my wedding, and I share this story with a lot of love, but my father, he gave his father of the bride speech. My dad referenced me in that speech as an actress. And I know he meant well. And it's a very easy mistake to make. I mean, I try to put myself in his shoes. Here I was an actress from the age of 8 to 23. And I would say most of those years I spent living in his house, right? But here I was getting married at age 27. And I no longer saw myself that way. Like I was no longer an actress. That wasn't a part of who I was. And that definitely wasn't a part of my identity. I had managed to separate myself from the action of acting and theater and, realize who is Brittany beyond that. I was more than that. I'd always been more than that, but now I could see it. But his concept of me hadn't updated yet. He still saw me as the girl living in his house who decorated her room with Broadway memorabilia, who he lovingly took to New York City to see Broadway shows every couple years, right? And so that moment, it felt so stark to me when he mentioned me as an actress in that very important speech, because it wasn't who I saw myself as anymore. I hadn't seen myself like that for 5 years. My self-worth was no longer tied to that anymore. And so it felt like he didn't know me. He just knew some old carcass, some old facade, right? And so it's so easy for us. If we try and we fail at something, it's so easy for our subconscious minds to create these core beliefs that tell us, I'm not enough, or I'm not good at this. Something's wrong with me. Because if you were the problem, rather than the problem being an action you did or didn't do, or a skill you didn't or didn't have, or even a completely random outside circumstance that had zero to do with you, if you were the problem, then it's easier for next time to say, well, why even try? It feels safer to no longer risk gathering more proof. So how do we tune back into the truth here? Well, it all comes down to detaching your identity from the outcome, reminding yourself who I am is bigger than what I achieve. You are more than your manifestation. I know we love manifestations here on the Destination Manifestation Show, but I love you and who you are, the truth of you more. You are more than your manifestation. Your manifestation is just simply a cherry on top of a very delicious life. It's one of the reasons why I like to start my day with the mantra, thank you for waking up. Everything else is just gravy. I do. I start my day every day with that mantra. This mantra actually came to me during a personal hypnotherapy session I did because I realized that I was making the outcomes of things about me. I was letting it determine if today was going to be a good day or not, based on how many views I got on my Instagram post the day before, or how many sales I made that month, or if I was pregnant or not that month, or any other outcome. I was letting that dictate my life. But when you realize that your only job is to wake up and you're a success if you do so, because there are some people who didn't get that chance to wake up in the morning, everything else simply becomes a bonus. And you no longer take personal ownership over the outcome. You just do you. Failure now becomes simply data that you can learn from. It's not a definition of who you are. You can adjust. You can try something else. You can refine. You can do it again. But when you take it personally, you just want to shut down. You want to shut down as a mechanism to protect yourself. But when you see it as a learning opportunity, that's when you want to try again. You want to do again. You want to do better. Now, I know that you are on your way to your destination manifestation. That is the whole point of this show. So just imagine if your Google Maps gave you a wrong turn, okay? Would you blame it on your car? Would you say, this car is a total piece of crap. It's a bad car. I'm never driving this car again. Let's tow it. No, you just simply reroute if you took that wrong turn. That's what failure is. It's a reroute. It's not a reason to quit. So stop, please stop taking it so personally. I've had so many clients who come to work with me And they've come in with this thought, this won't work for me. But I can tell that when they no longer want to think that thought, or they no longer want to believe that thought, because there is a part of them that showed up for that session. And if they really 100% believed that it doesn't work for them, they would have never showed up. They would have never booked the session in the first place, right? And the part that showed up, that's the part I want to talk to. That's the part I want to get to know better. That's the part we're going to strengthen together, even if it's just like a 0.5% little sliver of a part. That's the part that I want to strengthen within you, because that part still has a sliver of hope that things can be different. Like I said, I've worked with so many who have felt that way over the years, but there is this one particular client that really sticks out to me that I want to share a story with, okay? You see, she had been dealing with PTSD for literally decades, okay? She was in her 50s. The PTSD, it started back in her 20s, and it just completely consumed her whole life. It was like a virus in her life. She had been in the military. She was a woman in the military, and she had endured her fair share of hardships, as you can imagine. She had experienced severe bullying and psychological abuse from a superior while she was deployed. Not to mention, there was the trauma that just comes from experiencing active combat, right? She found herself in such a high stress role. She was, dealing with screwed up authority dynamics, and there was trauma, and all of that was just sort of, further compounded by these high pressure settings. And she had experienced a lot. And so even though she felt like those early experiences, like they had completely derailed her life and derailed her confidence, there was still a sliver of hope. There was still a part of her that wanted to know how life could be different. And that curiosity, that was enough of a spark that allowed her to show up for that first session. And thank God that part of her, she could sense and she could feel within her. Because at first she didn't think it was possible for her, but she wanted to know why I thought it was. Because she couldn't convince me. I'm sorry, I won't buy into that story. I knew it was possible for her. And she wanted to know why in the world I thought that way. And so we worked together tirelessly over the next 4 to 6 months or so. And then she started to see little small shifts here or there just at first. The first shift was that she just started sleeping better, which was great. No more nightmares, which was amazing. She hadn't experienced that in years. And so that itself was a quick win, was a relief, right? Prior to working together, she was terrified of public speaking. Like speaking out to her, that was beyond the comfort zone. That felt very unsafe. And so anytime where she felt like she might have to speak up or where she might be put on the spot, in a conversation, she just avoided those situations. She'd stay silent. And sure enough, she started going out with her husband. She started placing herself in social situations, going out to parties. She would contribute to the conversation. And it just felt so good to be, for her to feel like she was part of the world again. Like she had isolated herself so much and now she was reintegrating. And it felt so good to her to continually prove her old self wrong, to show herself why it could work. Old hobbies that she used to love, but for years had just sort of no longer excited her, had just kind of been bland to her. She decided to come back to them again. She regained a passion for gardening. She'd always loved to be outside, nature and garden. And what was amazing is when she started gardening again, she was nurturing more than just flower beds, right? She was nurturing her soul again. She was regaining her drive. She was finding herself out there in the dirt. She was filling in that missing piece of her heart where she used to let the weeds take over. But now it was hers. It was hers again. Her family and friends, they started to notice these shifts and these changes in her, and they would bring it up to her, and it would just make her glow and make her smile, I always thought this was funny. Her husband was always the one that would remind her to schedule her sessions with me. He'd be like, honey, it's been 2 weeks. Get in a session. And I don't blame him, right? He just loved getting to spend time with the woman that he fell in love with. He felt like he got her back again. And he loved that. He wanted that to continue for her. And of course, what's really cool is the manifestations, without even us focusing on them, they just started cropping up like crazy, completely out of the blue, which, I mean, this is how manifestation works. When you're in alignment, the manifestations come, right? One of the coolest ones was that a wealthy family member actually offered to pay off both of her children's college tuitions in full out of the blue, just like literally randomly just offered, which obviously was like a huge weight off her shoulders. And it was just this beautiful sort of unexpected surprise from all this work that she had been doing. You know, life just gets to be better and better. And she kept telling me, which I love to hear, she would say, I'm not going to lie, this version of me, this manifested me, like I'd be friends with her. Like I like her. In fact, I do really like her. And that was just such a revelation. I don't think she had really liked herself in a really long time. And it just kind of makes you think like, gosh, do I like myself? Like, yeah, I do. That's something to really cherish. Don't you want to get to a place where you like yourself too? Like she hadn't liked herself in years, but all these changes were so amazing. And sure, they were amazing. She loved them, but she was most proud of proving herself wrong. She was wrong when she initially thought this won't work for me, because it did. And now she got to reap the benefits of that belief, of that sliver of hope that she followed, that led her down the path of all these changes. So if you've been carrying around this idea that something is wrong with you, that you're somehow the broken variable in this equation, I just want to gently but very firmly just call a big, strong BS on that. You're not broken. You're becoming. And the only thing that's ever truly been wrong is that you've just been taught to judge your becoming process too early. You're in the middle of the story, y'all. All this time, you've been trying to write yourself off before the chapter's even finished, okay? And you're right at the good part. So keep reading, keep writing, keep going. And listen, I'll tell you this. If you've made it this far into the episode, I think you are clearly someone who wants to believe that it can and it will work for you. I don't believe that you actually believe this thought. I don't. You're someone who wants to change, who wants to heal, and who wants to grow. And that desire alone, just simply having that desire, that is proof that your subconscious mind is already trying to move you towards something more aligned. You're already on that journey. You're not stuck. You're just updating. And it's this shifting process that means more to you in the end than the actual manifestation or goal itself. I know it doesn't feel that way, but you will realize it's just a cherry on top. I kid you not. It's this becoming process that you will remember so much longer after the glitzy goal is achieved. Which brings me to this. Today is the final day to join my Bump Up and Breakthrough one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching sale. This is your very last chance to grab 50% off my 3-month, 6-session program. It's the last time I'm offering it before I go on maternity leave and before this opportunity really disappears for good in 2025, which is so sad. I can't believe these are the last clients I'm taking on at this 3-month program. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it. The sale for this, though, ends at midnight tonight, April 15th, 2025. If you're listening to this the day that this episode comes out. So I don't want you to be like Cinderella, okay? Do not miss your chance at midnight. So if you've been nodding along to this episode, if you see yourself in any of these limiting beliefs, if you are tired of circling around those same old doubtful beliefs over and over, if you just know deep down that you're on the edge of something big, but you just need help sort of clearing the noise in your mind and stepping into that next chapter, then this is your sign. This episode is your reroute. I had a client send me this message the other day, and I think it really applies to what we've been talking about, okay? Here's what she said. She said, I used to think it was easier to be broken. Then I found all of your resources, and you've changed my life for the better. Yeah, she used to think it was easier to be broken, but she doesn't believe that anymore. So this is your moment to finally say, what if it does work for me? I mean, have you let yourself go there? The payoff is so much bigger than the doubt. What if this program, like for so many of my other clients, is the ticket that will get you there? It's the one thing you haven't tried yet, and it's the thing that works. You work because of it. I'm essentially giving you your dream at 50% price, at 50% off. Like, is that worth it to you? I know if somebody would have told me like 6 months ago before I was pregnant, like, hey, guess what, Brittany, you could get pregnant and it will be half as difficult as you ever imagined or something like that, right? I would have been like, freaking sign me up. I mean, frankly, at that point, I would have paid double to reach my goal of pregnancy, but instead I get to pay half. Like, it seems too good to be true, but it's not. I mean, I told you guys the story of why I did this. It's my way of passing along the positive karma of manifesting one of my deepest desires. I want to celebrate that with you because I know how energy works and I know how important that positive momentum is. So let's just go ahead and squash the doubt, shall we? Doubt has no place here, not in your mind. Let's make your subconscious mind your best friend and your greatest cheerleader. And let's get you moving toward the life that you've been dreaming about. So if this sounds like something that resonates with you, that feels aligned to you, I want you to head over to BrittanyHoops.com/private. Or of course, you can always tap the link in the show notes to book before midnight tonight. You just got to use the code word BUMP at checkout. You can use it for a single session or for a 6-session program. It'll be a 3-month program. You'll finish it before July 1st. I want you to know that manifestation isn't just for other people. Hypnotherapy isn't just for those people that got it all together or who were into the woo-woo stuff or whatever, you know? No shame if you are. I am at times too. But it isn't just for those people. Your breakthrough isn't just possible. It's freaking waiting for you. So what are you waiting for? So I just want to thank you, travelers. Thank you so much for listening today. And I will see you in the next episode. And in fact, maybe, just maybe, I'll actually see you inside the program before the clock runs out instead.
I don't know.